Okay, video session 3 for the snow day, February 7th. Here we go. We're going to talk about spreading nutrition information, which is rampant. Um, this is meant to be more of a discussion in class, and I'll bring this to the discussion board, but mostly I'd just like to point out here that there are a whole host of sources for nutrition information. Books, magazines, Instagram, Facebook, friends, family, doctors, nurses, so actual health providers. But really, most people just get what they want to know by Googling things. And while some of the information that's going to come up from a nutrition Google search is going to be well researched, founded in evidence based science, and very trustworthy information, not all of it is. So the next time you are seeking some advice about nutrition or food, I definitely want you to keep that in mind and be careful about your sources and really think through what their motivations are. And we'll go through some red flags and some ways that you can help yourself make sure that you're looking up information that's valid. So, anecdotes and testimonials are one way that many companies provide nutrition information to you. All this really is a claim that something works, a product, a program, etc. And anybody can say that. The most common one that people really search for is going to be the celebrity testimonial. So you'll see this with Oprah, for example. She has testimonial for Weight Watchers, or whatever they're calling themselves now. Marie Osmond, I think it is, put her stamp of approval on Jenny Craig or one of those other weight loss programs. And there's a whole host of these if you go through it. If you go through them, there's tons and tons of examples of famous people saying, yes, I agree with this. This is working for me and it's going to work for you. And that's all that it is, really, someone's endorsement. And they definitely can be a little ambiguous, scientifically wise, because that's an individual. And just because something worked for them doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. You can't be sure that the information they're providing is based on scientific facts, because 95% of the time, the people providing testimonials are not actually scientists. They just had a good experience with the product, or more likely, in the case of celebrities anyway, they're being paid to endorse the product. So that's something that you really need to keep in mind when you're looking at those. Influencers on Instagram and Facebook who are endorsing products and providing links to said product, most of the time they're being paid either directly by the company for their advertising, or for advertising for them on whatever platform they've got, or by you clicking on that link, viewing ads, and then potentially purchasing the product at their recommendation. That doesn't necessarily mean that the products they're hawking are bad. It just means that they have a little skin in the game and their motivation may not be entirely pure. So there's a lot of nutrition information out there because it comes from so many different sources, as I'm sure you thought of when you were looking at or thinking of where you might get some information. Magazines, books, websites, television, commercials, infomercials, Home Shopping Network, which every time I read this is a book slide and not a me slide. Every time I read that, I giggle because I don't know anybody who watches the Home Shopping Network anymore. But that's beside the point. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat. People are on Snapchat with nutrition things, I assume. I don't like Snapchat, so I don't follow it. But I know there's a lot on Instagram and a whole lot on Facebook too. And just because something is on the internet like that from a source that you like, or a non-nutrition educated person. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong. It just means that you need to take it with a grain of salt. Not all of those sources are reliable. And to be a careful consumer, you should not assume that all the nutrition information presented in the popular media, like news organizations, books, magazines, websites online, those are popular media sources. Those are not all reliable sources. If you think of a book or a magazine, they want to sell you on their book and or magazine, and that's going to be a big motivator for whatever it is that they write in there. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution does not protect consumers with the freedom from nutrition misinformation or false nutrition claims. Freedom of speech is a wonderful thing that gives people the freedom to speak the truth, and it also gives people freedom to tell you complete nonsense. So it's your responsibility now, especially that there's so many avenues for people to tell you complete nonsense, to look at information that you receive critically and make sure that you can analyze that appropriately. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration can regulate nutrition and health-related claims on product labels like vitamin supplements and foods, but they can't prevent the spread of health and nutrition information published in books, pamphlets, or presented in television, radio programs, podcasts, or on social media. Nobody can prevent that. I mean, it would be impossible, frankly. So there's a lot of critical thinking that needs to go into looking at a piece of information when we're talking about whether or not it's factual. And now we're going to talk about how to do that. So the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is all about consumer protection. They enforce consumer protection laws and investigate complaints about false or misleading health claims that are used in advertising. According to the FTC, Americans spend billions, that's with a B, of dollars annually on fraudulently marketed and unproven health-related products and treatments that are often useless and sometimes harmful. Skeptical people do not believe claims without checking into them, and that can look like a whole bunch of different things, and we'll talk through that specifically here. So in order to become a more skeptical consumer, you need to definitely start by not believing everything you hear or read. And that may include not believing everything you hear or from me. If you see me saying something that you previously thought was the opposite of true, I expect you to bring that up. As you learn to be a more skeptical consumer of information, it's important not to just take any person's word at face value, because things change. You always want to ask questions about the source of their information. If I tell you salt raises blood pressure, you have always heard that salt lowers blood pressure. Excuse me. I would expect you to ask me questions about the source of where I got that information, and ask questions about my motives for promoting that information. Perhaps I sell a sodium-free seasoning, and that's why I'm telling you. It's also important to be wary of salespeople, nutrition experts, claims the product was scientifically tested or clinically tested at a major university. Major universities don't just test random companies' supplements. That's not what they're there to do. So that could mean usually one of two things. A, they've completely made that up, and their product was not clinically tested at a major university, or perhaps the major university did some sort of scientific experiment on a piece of their product, and then they've sort of extrapolated that and into a product that's a little bit different, and they're capitalizing on this single nutrient research that the major university did. you'll definitely want, if you see a citation to what appears to be a scientific journal article and some kind of scientific sounding terms that are often thrown into advertisements for nutrition products to kind of confuse people or make that seem legitimate, follow the link to those. See what that original study says. Google it and see what other nutrition experts are saying about this product. You want to look for more than one source of info on a product before you invest in it. Practicing medicine without the proper training and licensing or quackery is illegal. And that's something that can be promoted to the FTC. Oops. All right, so in summary, wary of salespeople, nutrition experts. If they're saying nutrition expert such and such, that person needs to have some verifiable credentials. Claims that the product was scientifically tested, that's incredibly vague. What does that mean? How many people was this product tested on? Where was it tested? Was it in the lobby of the company that creates it? Because that's going to be a pretty biased test. What university or institution was involved? Is it an accredited university or institution? You all may have seen in the news recently that the Department of Homeland Security actually just recently made up a university, so that they can sound very legitimate and not actually be real. We want to look for actual, real, viable citations if those are included in a product information, and who created the article that's being cited. Was it the owner of the company? Was it an independent researcher? And see where that article was published or if it was published, because publishing in a peer-reviewed journal gives an article a lot of credibility in the scientific community. Publishing by yourself or in a non-peer-reviewed journal doesn't give you any scientific credibility. Scientific terms like enzymatic therapy, nutritionals, or colloidal chelated extract, those sometimes mean something, but often are vague or meaningless, and they can be really false or misleading. So if there's a word that you're not 100% sure about, Google it and see what it actually means. See if it's used in other sources of information that you trust or not. And if it's not, then you can know that they're probably just using that word to sort of make themselves look a little more important than they are. And then popular sources of nutrition information like the magazines on the internet. Sometimes research supports claims of a product effectiveness, and sometimes it doesn't. And other times, there's even research that is supposed to alert consumers to potential health risks that may not necessarily be included in an advertisement for a product or service. So definitely important to do a little bit more digging, not just on the original company's website. And you can look for these particular red flags, which can be really helpful in identifying products that are not going to work for you. So quick and easy remedies, guess what? If weight loss were quick and easy, we would all not need to lose weight. So, sorry, there is not a quick and easy way to lose weight. That is a bummer, but it is true. Too good to be true claims. I lost 30 pounds in a month. That's a pound a day. No, that didn't happen. That's ridiculous. Or if it did happen, then I'm very concerned for that person's health. Scare tactics is something that some advertisers can use. Like I've seen some people specifically targeting women of childbearing age and talking about how being deficient in a certain nutrient or being a certain BMI or weight can lower your fertility risk. That's something that really hits a nerve for a lot of people, and it can be scary and cause you to sort of commit to a treatment, but it may not be true at all, and that should give you pause if they're trying to scare you into buying their product. then they need to scare you, and that's something that you should think about. Money back guarantees are not necessarily a deal breaker, but they can be a little bit of a red flag. And then I see this a lot with some functional medicine practitioners really touting themselves as superior to unconventional medical practices, saying like, your doctor's not going to tell you this, but I will. Well, your doctor's not trying to keep secrets from you. Your doctor is doing the best that they can with the information that they have. And by telling you that they're not giving you the right treatment, that's not helpful. What it does is tries to create an us versus them sort of environment, which loops you in to wanting to purchase their product. Testimonials and anecdotes being the only results proven, that's something that you should be aware of. Recommendations based on a single study. Again, we can't make recommendations based on a single study. That's not a viable way to make nutrition or health recs in an evidence-based manner. So if there are recommendations based on scientific literature, it needs to be based on more than one study. Unsupported nutrient claims, which we'll talk about later, and then disclaimers, which you'll usually find in small or very difficult to read print. The internet is really a double-edged sword. Information access has never been greater, but you have to sit through lots of really poor information to get the worthwhile info. A lot of noise out there, and a lot more noise than there is factual, useful info. So be careful and do your due diligence in considering your sources. You're going to want to use multiple sites, especially government agency sites, which will end in .gov. .org sites can be useful depending on the organization, but mostly you can just sort of pick whatever your URL says. You can write in .org if you'd like, so that's not necessarily a good option. .edu sites from other universities or colleges, education institutions are a pretty good indicator as well. You want to rely primarily on sites sponsored by groups of qualified health professionals. That's where the information is going to be evidence-based and carefully monitored for risks as well. You want to be skeptical of information in blogs. There's a lot of really good information in some health blogs. There's a whole lot more really crappy information in other health blogs. So it's not that you shouldn't read them, and it's not that bloggers can't be correct. I have a blog. I have credentials, and I speak to what I know and am open in saying what I don't know. Those are the things that you want to be aware of. And then you want to be wary of websites that promote or sell products for profit. That's the biggest one. People aren't lying to you just because it's fun. They want to make money. So if you're being sold something, know that everything written about that product it's for a targeted purpose of getting you to buy it. You want to review sites carefully for any disclaimers. Don't trust the sites that attack a medical or scientific establishment. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're 100% wrong. Sometimes the medical and scientific establishment needs a little prodding to move in the direction of what the literature says. But if that's the basis of what that website is saying, then that's really just serving to promote an us versus them sort of mentality and sell you something. And you want to avoid sites that provide online diagnoses or treatments because those can be very dangerous. And you want to avoid giving personal information to people who are trying to sell you things just to protect your own privacy and because you want to keep your health information private. So we'll pick up with seeking reliable nutrition information in the next video.